I don't need to tell you that Lax Vox is an amazing tool to help you become a better singer. Now, what are some things that you should avoid when using that tool? Well, in this episode, I've got you covered with 5 things that you really should avoid so that you can keep your voice and your vocal training as efficient and healthy as possible. Let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm the founder of the Singing Insiders, in which I help passionate singers just like yourself become the best versions of themselves through singing. And in these episodes, you're going to get a mix of tips, tools, techniques, insights about singing that are designed to help you up-level your singing skills. So that being said, let's dive into today's episode all around Lax Vox, this amazing tool for your voice. But most specifically, what are 5 things that you can avoid when using Lax Vox? If you're curious about how to use Lax Vox, I have done an episode all around using this tool, especially for beginner singers. So if this is the first time that you've heard about that tool, definitely check out that episode. I will link to it in the description here down below. So number 1 to avoid when using Lax Vox is the airflow. And more specifically, too much airflow. Blowing too hard throughout your tube here. And what I'm going to cover today, those 5 things to avoid, they work for Lax Vox, but really, truly, honestly, they work for any other SOVT tool out there, whether that's a straw, whether that's the SOVT trainer, whether that's a brr or a v, whatever SOVT tool that you're using, these 5 things will apply to that as well. So what do I mean with blowing too hard? Well, normally when we are blowing through the tube, we want to have an even, constant airflow. It's always the same rhythm. If I'm blowing too hard, I'm exaggerating, of course, but what happens is that my vocal cords, instead of beautifully vibrating against each other, well, suddenly they're having too much air and they pop open. We don't want to have that. So having this constant airflow on your SOVT tool, again, whether that's the Lax Vox or something else, is such a good practice to keep in the back of your mind. Also, when you're then singing with your actual voice without any SOVT tool, you want to keep holding on to that constant airflow. And oftentimes, singers that notice any type of tension in their voice, that's because they're pushing too hard and they're pushing too much airflow through the vocal cords, which leads to tension and hoarseness. So oftentimes, the solution there is just going back to that constant, healthy size airflow. And you can start practicing that on your SOVT tool. Again, Lax Vox or any other tool. That's number 1. Number 2 that we want to avoid is using the wrong straw or tube size. What do I mean by that? As you know, with Lax Vox, there are different sizes. So if you're watching on YouTube, then you have a visual. If you're watching or listening to the podcast and you need a visual, then I invite you to go over to YouTube. But as you can see here, I got 3 different tube sizes. And one has benefits that the other might not have. The general rule of thumb is the bigger the tube, the less back pressure we have. So this big tube will be the least back pressure, and this smaller tube will have the highest back pressure. Does that make sense? Why is that important to know? Well, some singers, they come to me and they say, "Oh, Maggie, my voice feels so tired today. I sang the whole night yesterday. I woke up a little bit hoarse and I've been blowing through my little tiny straw this whole morning and it's actually getting worse. What's happening?" Well, when we are hoarse and we want to restore our voices and work on releasing any tension or hoarseness, then we want to have a low back pressure. If then you tell me that you've been singing on a little tiny straw, which is the smallest tube in Lax Vox world, well, then you're working with high back pressure. That doesn't make sense. High back pressure is amazing if you want to train your voice. Singing the high notes, belting, all those things, that's training. Training equals high back pressure. Releasing equals low back pressure. And you need to know when you're blowing through a straw, when you're blowing through a tube, what's my intention? Why am I using this tool today? And depending on that intention, you can choose if you want to have a higher back pressure, lower back pressure, and choose the according size of straw or tube or whatever you're working with to fit that need. Does that make sense? That's number 2, using the right amount of back pressure. Number 3 is closely related to number 1. Number 1 was blowing too hard, remember? So that our vocal cords would pop open. Number 3, and I've already hinted at this, the third mistake or the third thing that we want to avoid is not maintaining a consistent breath flow. So for example, if I'm blowing through my tube here and sometimes I'm blowing pretty hard, then I'm blowing very little air through the straw, there's not going to be any consistent airflow. It sounds a little bit like this. I'm exaggerating again, but it doesn't make sense. Because what happens if I don't have a consistent airflow? Well, the vibration that my vocal cords experience will change as well. And then when I'm singing an actual song without the tube or the straw or whatever SOVT tool you're using, well, then I will have that same effect in my full singing voice. And that will cause to, again, tension here and there, or the feeling that you're squeezing your voice, you're trying to squeeze out a certain note, or this idea that you're pushing your voice to get to a certain pitch. We want to have that. We don't want to do any pushing or squeezing, because that means that we're playing with even more airflow. We want to play with a constant amount of airflow. So that's number 3. We had blowing too hard as number 1. Number 2, using the wrong size of straw or tube. In other words, not using the right amount of vocal or of back pressure. And then number 3 was not maintaining a consistent breath flow. If that for you has been super valuable so far, by the way, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, because then you will keep on being updated on new episodes just like this one that come out. Now, the main thing actually has to be covered, so let's continue. Number 4 that we want to avoid is using the incorrect water depth. And this is now specifically for Lax Vox. Because with Lax Vox, we're not only playing with the tube size, so bigger tube, less back pressure. Yes, smaller tube, higher back pressure. We're also playing with the water. You can put your tube at the very top of the water, maybe 2 centimeters in, or you can put the tube all the way down, which is about, in this case, I would say like 5 to 6 centimeters in, and you're going to notice a difference. Now, here's a general rule of thumb. The higher in the water, the less the back pressure. Lower in the water, the higher the back pressure. And this comes back to your intention. Why are you using this Lax Vox today? And then depending on your intention, you choose what is my tube size and where in the water am I placing it. So it's just about knowing how it works and knowing what you want to achieve with it. And then depending on those decisions, make a choice to move forward. Number 5, this is a very important one. We don't want to overdo it. Many singers, when they discover this tool, whether it's a Lax Vox or a straw, whatever, they are so excited to use it, and they use it all the time. All the time. And like with anything, moderation really is key here, having some type of balance. So if you've just bought your Lax Vox and you're excited to use it and you use it for 2 hours, your voice might feel tired after those 2 hours. My suggestion would be to start with like 5 minutes. And then tomorrow, maybe go on to 7 minutes. And then the day after that, 12 minutes. So keep building up so that your voice gets used to this new way of vibration, vocal cord vibration. In other words, they start getting used to this new type of singing. And then once you found a spot where, okay, 20 minutes feels so good for my voice, now I can go on and sing, that is where we want to also keep the balance between using an SOVT tool like Lax Vox, but then also actually sing. Many singers, they tend to keep holding on to their straw and sing everything that they can through their straw, but then they become dependable on the straw. We don't want you to be dependable on anything. You need to be in shape with your voice in any scenario, whether you have a straw or not, or whether you have a Lax Vox tube or not. It's all about finding that balance between the two, using tools to help you, and then also being able to do it without. That was the fifth one. So let me recap. The first one, blowing too hard. We don't want to do that. Using the wrong straw size. We don't want to do that either. Not maintaining a consistent breath flow or air flow. Incorrect water depth. So again, goes back to the back pressure. And then 5, overdoing it. We want to have balance. Now, as you can probably notice from today's episode, singing is more than just relying on talent. Actually, I would say that it's training over talent 100% of the time. And the training aspect of things is something that oftentimes singers look at, but are not consistent in. Now, one of the main techniques to really master if you want to experience vocal freedom and being able to sing the high notes, the low notes, and all the notes in between is really mastering your mix voice. Mixed voice, well, I can go on and on and on. And that's exactly for that reason that I invite you to keep that conversation going around mixed voice. So I've done an episode around mixed voice in the past, and I will link to it in the description here down below. My invitation to you really is that we keep this conversation going in that next episode, because then we're diving deeper into the whole world of vocal technique and how that can help you to take your singing to the next level. So check out the link in the description here down below. I will see you in that next episode. And thank you so much for having been here, for spending this time with me. I appreciate you. And I will see you next week. Bye.